Welcome back to the plot. It's quite a sunny day today, but the wind is up a bit, so it makes it feel a bit chilly. Now, it's still a bit cold to start planting out, but I want to get some of the tomatoes and cucumbers started in the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to be turning this, show you how I turn my compost into potting compost. Now this stuff is quite good stuff, but you see it's got like lots of twigs and bits and stuff in there, which is just not very good for using as a potting compost. So what we're going to do is I'm going to double sieve it. So I'm going to use this, get it out. Start off using this large sieve, which is about just over under a centimetre holes. I'm going to sieve that first, and then secondly I'm going to sieve it through this one, which is a nice finer mesh. I find double sieving it better because then if you sieve it with this small one first, what you find is all these holes get really clogged up really quickly. So we'll take out the big chunks with this one, and then we'll sieve it again. I'll get on with that, and I'll show you what it looks like after we put it through this one, and then after we put it through the green one. So I'm going to get on and get that sieved, and then I'll show you how I make up my seedling and potting mix. So after the first one, we're left with all these lumpy bits, and those are all bits of twig. They can go back in the composter. And in this bucket, we're starting to get there. There's a few still little twiggy bits in there, but there's a few twiggy bits and other larger pieces, but we're getting there. It's starting to lighten up, so let's do it again, and this time put it through the finer sieve. Right, so now we've double sieved this, and as you can see, it's lovely now, light and crumbly compost now. Now, what we're going to do to this is add some perlite and vermiculite. So I'll go and get that, and we'll add that in. So let's talk briefly about perlite and vermiculite. Perlite is this stuff. It's a natural product, really good at holding moisture. So it'll actually hold about 3 or 4 times its weight in water. It's not very light, it's really light stuff. And it's ideal for plants that aren't particularly drought tolerant and seedlings. Vermiculite is these white, and it's like a volcanic rock that when they reheat it, it sort of has the water inside it, it sort of blows up and forms these little tiny crystals. And that is ideal for good drainage. Doesn't hold really any water, it just gives the drainage. So for new seedlings, what they really need is they need to be moist but not too wet. But they need a lot of air around their roots so they can establish their roots, and the compost doesn't like sort of, although this sort of breaks apart quite easily, it can quite easily get saturated when you're watering and a bit over ambitious. So in here, I mean, in terms of mixing, people recommend different mixes from like 50% compost to 50% perlite or 50% vermiculite, or a 70-30 mix. And we've got a big bucket here, so we're probably going to put these 2 lots of vermiculite, perlite in, and 1 lot of vermiculite. That's basically because I want a good aeration using the perlite, but I know sometimes I can be a bit overzealous with the watering, and therefore the vermiculite in there will help absorb some of that extra water and then release it back into the soil. So this is probably about a 60-40, 70-30 mix in terms of volumes. Okay, so I've got my perlite and vermiculite, can't even say it, in here. Now, what most people attempt to do is get down in there and like sort of turning it around. But I don't like to do that because vermiculite, as you can see, it is really, really light and it's really dusty. And if you breathe that stuff in, it's not particularly nice. So all you need to do though, to actually mix these things, just get yourself 2 buckets and then just slowly tip that across into that bucket. Then just pick that bucket up and just do the same again. Do that about 3 or 4 times and you'll find that actually all that mix is now evenly mixed. Now the key to this is actually not to just like, what you don't want to do is just grab the bucket and just chuck it straight in. What you want to do is slowly let the top layer, you see the top layer of the soil and the vermiculite is coming off, and then it will slowly work its way down to the bottom layer. So every time you do this process, it just gets a little bit more mixed up. So there we go. We've done that. We've done that about, what's that, 3-4 times. We'll do it once more, and then we'll have a look. And there you can see, all nicely mixed up, without any of the hassle actually getting in there and trying to turn it and getting all that dust in your throat. And then, so that is already lovely light mix, perfect for seedlings and for seeds to grow in. And we'll be getting that back, and in the next couple of weeks, I'll probably hold off until the middle of March, we'll be planting up the tomatoes and cucumbers. And later on today, we shall probably look to put some of our sweet peas in so they're ready, because the new propagator at home is almost complete. So we will be sharing that in the next video. Before I go today though, I did have a couple of questions in terms of from viewers. One was around the raised bed and just how we structured that, and that's now in place, and I'll show you that in a second. But what we did was, step over this bed. What we did was, we had the bark on the bottom, then we had bark, straw, some old soil which we sure contained hundreds of weed seeds, then some old coir bags, then we put the cardboard on top of that, and then we put the compost on top of that. So I'll share that in a minute, and that's all finished now. And the other question I had from one of the viewers was how we built the fruit cage. So have a quick look at that bed, and then I'll run you through the fruit cage. Okay, so here we have the new raised bed all done and dusted, and I'm going to put the potatoes at this end. I'm going to build up like a little some stakes around there, and put some boards around so we can put the hay down and then build that up. But now let's have a look at this fruit cage. Now I had an inquiry as to whether we bought this as a fruit cage or we built it ourselves. We actually built it ourselves, and we got all these poles. They're a 26.9mm scaffolding poles, and we got them from a company called the Metal Store. Can't speak highly enough about them. They're really good. If you reach out to them and ask questions, they're really prompt replying. And the one thing they will do is they will cut the poles to the right length for you, so without any extra charge. So what we've done is, this fruit cage is actually 3.5 meters by 12 meters, which is big for a fruit cage. We used 2.5 meter poles, which we've just driven into the ground by about 30-40 centimeters, and then each one of these adjoining sections along the side is a 3-meter span, and then each one of these across the top is a 3.5-meter span. Now we did speak to them, they said advise us not to go much more than 3 to 3.5 meters, otherwise the weight of the pole might sag. And then what we did was we just made up for this, we got some 2-meter lengths for the door and some standard 1 meter lengths. I think it was 1 meter and 1.05 centimeters length. And then all you do actually is, when you get them, they're standard scaffolding fixings. And these are the corner pieces. For these, one is just a straight through. This one down here is a 4-way, which you bolt onto this way, and then you just slot your poles in. And me and my youngest, who's only a 9-year-old, we put this together quite easy. We just went round, we started down this far end, hammered one pole in, marked across the length, hammered the other one in. Then while he was up on the step ladders holding that end of the pole, I went across and put that one in and bolted it in place. Then we put the next one in and just put it up all the way through. So that's how we built it. So I think this consists of 9 2.5 metre poles, obviously the doorway, 4 3.5 metre poles, and about 8 3 metre poles. And if I recall, the cost of the whole thing was about £350 in total, which was a lot cheaper than actually trying to get a ready-made one. And then the netting, we just use this, for netting, we've just used this plastic mesh netting. I'm not a particular fan of this because normally if you've got this on your plot, trying to store it anywhere, it doesn't fold up very well and it just goes over, takes up loads of room. But for this it's ideal because it's always in place and it's a bit resilient. You can actually get that cloth meshing as well. But that's the fruit cage. As I say, if you've got any other questions about it, just let me know. But as I say, I'll put a link to the actual metal store down in the description. And as I say, I can't speak highly enough about them. The delivery was brilliant, the customer service was brilliant, and in terms of price, they're really reasonably priced as well, as they, especially because they do that cutting service where they'll cut them to whatever length you want them to, and they won't do that thing where they say you want a 2.5 metre pole, but they say, oh, well, you'll have to buy a 3 metre one and we'll cut it down to by a 0.5 metre for you. They'll actually just charge you for the 2.5 metre pole. So it's really, really good, and so really pleased with it, and hopefully we'll get lots of blackberries and raspberries this year. So I'm going to bucket up and that compost mix and take that home with me so that we can actually get some planting done in the coming weeks when it starts to warm up. But I think we're still looking at nighttime temperatures in the negative figures at the moment, so we're holding off. We're eager to start, but we're holding off for a little while yet until we get some serious planting done. Until next time, see you again soon. Cheers.